Hi guys and welcome back to the Mighty Blues. My name is of course Cameron and welcome back today to another video. There you go, Donny van der Beek is an Everton player. He is signed for the club on loan until the end of the season. The deal was reported over the last 48 hours or so by pretty much every reporter and journalist in the country. Fabrizio Romano really leading with this story, and it has been announced by the club today that Donny van der Beek has signed until the end of the season and he will become an Everton player. The deal reportedly includes no option to buy at the end of the loan. And it was reported about 24 hours ago that Everton would be covering all of Donny van der Beek's wage and salary for the remaining months of the season. And as I said, that there was no option to buy within that contract as well. Frank Lampard makes his first signing as Everton manager. And, you know, he brings in a player who ultimately plays in a position that we desperately needed to strengthen in. Donny van der Beek technically is a fantastic footballer. I don't think there's absolutely any doubt of that whatsoever. There is a massive question mark as to whether or not his style of play suits the Premier League. I think a lot of Manchester United fans are a little bit frustrated at the fact that he maybe hasn't been given as much of an opportunity as he should have at Manchester United. I think he's only started 4 Premier League games this season. I think I looked at his stats yesterday and he'd only had just over 500 minutes of Premier League football since joining Manchester United over a year ago. So he certainly hasn't been given an awful lot of opportunities by Manchester United, obviously under Ole Gunnar Solskjaer and now under Ralf Rangnick. Now, there is a massive sort of question as to why is that the case. There's obviously a reasoning for that. Manchester United have got a lot of players in that midfield area. You look at the likes of McTominay, Fred, Paul Pogba, Bruno Fernandes. They've got a lot of players that play in those 3 or 4 spaces that maybe, you know, have stopped Donny van der Beek from getting those opportunities. You know, every time I've seen him play, he seems to have done relatively well. I've watched him a couple of times and he hasn't looked as great, certainly not in the defensive areas, but going forward, he seems pragmatic. He can run with the ball, he can take players on, he can score goals, and we know he's got the ability to be a really good player. Frank Lampard actually was a fan of Donny van der Beek when Chelsea played Ajax in the Champions League semi-final a couple of years ago. That was actually the game that led Chelsea to signing Hakim Ziyech the following summer, and reports are suggesting that on that day Frank Lampard was very impressed with how Donny van der Beek played. We've seen him obviously in the Champions League and he's looked particularly good there. Obviously on international duty with Holland he's looked good as well. But ultimately I think Donny van der Beek is another example of a player similar to Damari Gray really in the summer, in the sense that he's another player coming in with a point to prove. He's another player coming in with a chip on his shoulder. Another player coming in wanting to prove that he's good enough to have an impact in this league. Now, obviously, Everton and Manchester United are in 2 very different situations at the moment. Manchester United are fighting to try and finish in the top 4, try and get in those, you know, Champions League positions, never mind European positions. And Everton at the moment, whether we like it or not, are fighting to try and get out of a relegation battle, to try and get out of, you know, being in this horrific relegation battle that we're in at the moment. And if we lose the next couple of Premier League games, which hopefully we won't, and I don't think we will, given the new manager and the bounce that, you know, these players and hopefully us as fans will get from that, then we certainly will be in a relegation battle. So it's a very different situation that Donny van der Beek is coming into in a very different environment, and one that, you know, he isn't going to be able to settle into as per se. He's going to have to get the ground running. He's going to have to get his head down, work hard, battle, show that fight, show that desire, show that ability, you know, from the off. And Frank Lampard obviously is a massive fan of the player and believes the player will be able to come in and do that. Now it'll be interesting to see where Donny van der Beek fits in this Everton side. The assumption being that Frank Lampard will play a 3 in midfield, as that's what he's played, you know, at Derby and that's what he played at Chelsea. Then you would think that the midfield 3 would be Alan, Zakore and Van der Beek. Now, it's interesting really because I've listened to a couple of Manchester United fans over the last 24 hours or so, and they've talked about how, you know, obviously Crystal Palace were interested in Van der Beek and actually were seemingly had an agreement in place with Manchester United before Everton, you know, stepped in and hijacked that, if you like. But the Man United fans were talking about how if he'd have gone to Crystal Palace, he maybe had more of an opportunity to play in the number 8 role a little bit. You know, in that centre of midfield, not really particularly attacking, but also, not really particularly defensive, whereas if he goes to Everton, he might end up playing in the number 10, and they were talking about how that doesn't help Van der Beek's Manchester United career, because when he goes back to Manchester United, he isn't going to play in a number 10 because of Bruno Fernandes being there, and it actually got me thinking, where will Van der Beek fit in this Everton team? If Frank Lampard is going to adapt the flat three in midfield of Alan, Decore, and, Van der Beek, are we likely to see Decore being the attacking player in that three, i.e. the player going forward, creating chances, trying to get involved at the other end of the pitch, with Alan being the defensive player, helping that back four out, almost like that player in front of the back four, and Van der Beek being the player in the middle, just sort of linking everything together? Or are we more likely to see Van der Beek being the, being the creator, being the sort of, I don't want to say number 10, because it won't be a number 10 as per se, but the attacker out of the three midfielders, and Decore being the sort of middleman between Alan and Van der Beek? It'll be really, really interesting to see how this one works and how this one pans out. But ultimately, what we do know as of now is that Abdoulaye Decore is injured. He picked up an injury during Everton's last game, and he won't be available for a number of weeks. Whether or not that means he'll be available for Newcastle, Leeds, we don't know, but there will certainly be a period of time that Everton will be without Abdoulaye Decore, and Donny van de Beek might have to fill in that space as well. It'll be certainly really be interesting if Frank Lampard wants to go and bring in another midfielder. We have been linked with a couple of other midfielders over the last day or so, Dele Alli being one, Idrissa Gana Gueye being another, who would be an absolutely fantastic signing, but whether or not that happens is another question. But what we do know is Van der Beek certainly has got a lot of quality. Yeah, he scored a couple of goals during his time at Manchester United. As I said, opportunities have been very few and far between for Donny van der Beek, which is a little bit of a concern, because you look at it and think, why? But that doesn't necessarily mean that that's being fair. That doesn't necessarily mean that managers have given him a fair opportunity to prove himself. And as I said, if you listen to a lot of Manchester United fans, certainly if you're in and around Manchester United fan channels, what the majority of them have been saying for the last, 12 months or so is play Donny van der Beek. Where's Donny van der Beek? Why isn't he being given a chance? Why isn't he being given an opportunity to prove himself? And he's obviously very frustrated at that. And as I said, similar to Demarai Gray and similar to Frank Lampard in a sense, is that these are people coming into the club with a point to prove. These are people coming into the club who aren't necessarily at that young stage of thinking, yeah, well, I've still got, 5 or 6 years before I need to be at my prime, so there's no rush. I don't really need to, particularly get the ground running now. I've still got time. And they're not at that age where they're looking, thinking, I've been at my prime, I've won everything, I've done it all, I'm just coming here for a pay packet. They're at that stage where they're at that age, not necessarily Frank Lampard, obviously, because it's a different situation because he's a manager, but certainly the likes of Gray in the summer and Van der Beek now, they're at that age where they're thinking, if I don't get my head down and I don't prove myself, then what is the next stage of my career going to be? We know Donny van der Beek obviously is due to have a baby with his partner, I believe, and I think that was probably one of the factors in him choosing Everton over Manchester United, obviously being closer to Manchester. He wouldn't have to move house, and his family would still be able to be settled, only having to drive up the M62, is it, or the M6, whatever the motorway is, rather than going all the way to London. So, I think that definitely had a factor, but ultimately it's down to Donny van der Beek now to get his head down and show why, not only to Manchester United, but to Everton, why he's good enough to be a part of a Premier League side. And as I said, very different dynamic at Everton to what it is to Manchester United. We need players that are going to work hard. We need players that are going to battle. We need players that are going to be effective. And that's what Donny van der Beek has to be coming into Everton. He has to be effective. He has to be able to turn up, battle, fight, work hard, and bring something to the team week in, week out. And that's why I think it'll be interesting to see where Frank Lampard deploys him in this side. Is he going to be an attacker creating chances? Because we know he can do that. We know he can score goals. We know he can create chances up that end of the pitch. Is he going to be more of a defensive style of player, and Abdoulaye Decore is going to be the one going forward creating the chances? It's certainly an interesting thought, and it's certainly an interesting discussion to have. And who knows, if Donny van der Beek gets his head down and works hard and does well, Everton might be interested and Frank Lampard might be interested in bringing him in on a permanent in the summer, albeit there's no option for that to happen. But that doesn't mean that Everton can't try and pursue that in the summer if Donny van der Beek does well. And as I said, it's in the players' interest to have a fantastic second half of the season here, for one way or the other. If he does, then you'll have Everton looking to bring him in on a permanent, and depending on how he likes the football club and the people around the football club, that might be the ideal situation for him. But also, if he does, he'll have people at Manchester United thinking, do you know what, he's proved himself there, he's gone there, he's played a lot of football, he's worked hard, he's showed he can have an impact, let's give him a chance here as well. If he comes in and he doesn't do any of that, then Man United will look to sell him in the summer. Other Premier League teams will think he didn't really do it at Everton when they weren't in a great situation. So he's less likely to get a good move. So, listen, it's down to the player now. We've got to get behind him. As I said, I think he's got a lot of technical ability to do. A question is his pace and his physicality of what we need. Not necessarily being good enough to play in the Premier League. It's more of what Everton need. Did Everton need a Donny van der Beek style of player, or did Everton need an Idrissa Gana Gueye, an Abdoulaye Doucouré style of player? I certainly do question that. But he's in now, and we'll get behind him. And as I said, he certainly improves this squad. He absolutely improves this squad. I think technically he'd probably be our best midfielder technically in terms of his ability. And that will bring, something a little bit different for Frank Lampard. He's another option. Frank has identified already that we need another midfielder, certainly if we want to play that 4-3-3 that he likes to play. So he's gone out and literally before he's even been officially announced as Everton manager, he's made this deal happen. It'll be interesting to see if any other deals take place over the next couple of hours or so on deadline day, whether we go for somebody like a Loftus-Cheek, Dele Alli, Idrissa Gueye, Ross Barkley's been thrown in the hat as well, or players in this midfield position that we need to strengthen in. But also, I think we need to look at centre-backs as well. I really, really do think we need another centre-back if we've got, if we want to give ourselves the best chance of comfortably staying in this league. But for now, Donny van der Beek is an Everton player. Let us know your thoughts on it in the comment section down below. I'm quite happy with this deal. It's a low move, very low risk financially. I know we're paying all of his wages, and there'll probably be a considerable amount considering the deal he signed with Manchester United. But if it doesn't work out, he moves on in the summer and he obviously goes and returns to Manchester United. If it does work out, then, let's say Donny van der Beek comes in and is absolutely amazing, then Everton will more than likely stay in the Premier League, and then a decision can be made in the summer as to whether or not we want to go and bring him in on a permanent. Obviously, that would be a different deal to this one because there's no buy option in this deal. But technically, I think he's a good player. He certainly helps that midfield and gives a little bit more dynamism and a little bit more quality in that midfield three. Is he the type of midfielder we need? I'd question that. But, again, he's better than the midfielders that we've got. So, ultimately, it's an improvement and it's it's a positive in that sense as well. And we've got to get behind him. And as I said, he's got a chip on his shoulder. He's got a point to prove. He's got to get his head down, see this as a fresh start, work hard, and show his quality, show his ability, show what he can bring, and ultimately get involved with goals. Defensively, he's got to be strong. He's got to be tight. He's got to be effective. But he's got to ultimately have an impact. And I think Frank Lampard, being the midfielder Frank Lampard was, and Frank Lampard, having such a successful career in that position and looking at Donny van der Beek thinking this is the player that we need, I've got a lot of trust and a lot of faith in that, and let's hope it works. So there you go, Donny van der Beek is an Everton player here, signed on loan for the remainder of the season, no buy option in place, and I believe Everton will be covering all of his salary. Let us know your thoughts in the comment section down below. Are you happy with this transfer? Do you think Donny van der Beek comes in and improves Everton, or are you a little bit more, a little bit more jury out with the Van der Beek situation? Do you think we maybe could have gone with someone who's maybe a little bit more dynamic, a little bit quicker, a little bit more physical in there, or do you think that Van der Beek is exactly the type of player that we need, and his quality will be important in ultimately a relegation battle for Everton this season? So let us know your thoughts in the comments. If you have enjoyed this one, please do leave a like. It only takes a second if you're new. Don't forget to subscribe. Massive thank you for watching. More videos and streams coming over the course of the day, so keep subscribed if you are subscribed. If you're not subscribed, hit that subscribe button. It literally only takes a second. It's free and it helps us out massively. Massive thank you all for watching, and we'll see you soon on the Mighty Blues.